Well, good evening. It is December 4th, and I am Stacy Sanderson, and I have been just experimenting with a new microphone, which I couldn't figure out, which won't surprise anyone, but things that were once impossible can sometimes be easy. So I'll keep working on that to have slightly better sound. The topic of this post is very much focused on not just coping with or surviving the holiday season, but really, if I can use this expression, finding comfort and joy, right? I love those two words, and I actually really love the Christmas carol, God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, right? Like I love old language, but isn't comfort and joy what we're really looking for? And this is probably my third time speaking on this subject, but it is one of my favorite things to talk about, strangely enough, right? Bear with me because I'm going to turn this light down a tiny bit. Um, the reason why I love talking about this so much is that I am a big believer in ritual and celebration as something that's very healing. But also, if you have anyone in your life, in your family who's narcissistic, this is not a good time of year for them or you. And it's December 4th, as I said, and already, everything is ramping up in my practice. As people are wanting to get in and get talking about what they're going through. So, my whole foray into focusing on narcissism as a psychotherapist began at this time of year. In 2013, I wrote a blog about creating your own Christmas ritual based on my own experience of what I do to nurture and take care of myself during a stressful time. Or it shouldn't be, but it usually is, right? So I think this topic is important because everyone is deserving of a holiday season, Christmas, if you celebrate that, Hanukkah, if you celebrate that, that is peaceful and meaningful. So I want to take a moment and just talk about what's meant by toxic people. Because the term's being used a lot, it might be a little bit confusing. If we think about the technical definition of toxic, it refers to a substance that spreads and is harmful to everything around it, right? So toxic people, therefore, are those people who kind of upset everything around them, right? So toxic people need not be narcissistic, although narcissists are typically toxic, and there are other types of scenarios and people that might be considered toxic as well. But I am leaning in a little bit here to talk specifically about narcissism, but everything I say also applies to people who are difficult, challenging, create drama, who engage in conflict, right? So I also have notes so that I'll stay on track here. There's an important difference in delineation between narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder. So if you follow me and you've heard me talk before, I talk about this a lot, but it's key. One is quite common, the other one isn't. Narcissistic personality disorder is rare. Maybe there's more of it or more awareness, and most definitely I question the current diagnostic criteria. I think it needs to be tweaked a little bit. But narcissism itself is not rare, it's quite common. And even the best of us, kindest, sweetest, most compassionate people, can be a little bit self centered or self absorbed under stress. So, when I'm talking about narcissism, what mental health clinicians are being asked to do is to consider the level of impairment that an individual is experiencing. So, yes, I know we have all of these diagnostic criteria that are super fun to read, and it's super fun to say, yes, the person I know has this and this and this and this. I know. But as clinicians, we really need to be looking at how does the character pathology run interference with someone's life, their quality of life, their relationships. And we look at this in the domains of work, relationship, adjustment, in all kinds of different ways. And the more I do this, the more specific I get in asking those questions. But for our purposes tonight, what I want you to consider is as you're thinking about the toxic people in your life, to what extent does it influence not only their enjoyment and quality of life, but yours? All right, so just be thinking about that a little bit. So, what happens with narcissistic people during the holidays? I would wonder if there's not a lot of painful memories that surface for them, either consciously or not. So, painful traumatic experiences are held in the limbic system, in the central nervous system. And it can come out as very unconscious ways that people behave and unconscious ways that people feel. Okay. So it's important to remember that most narcissists are very dysregulated all the time. Their anger, their upset is on the surface a great deal of time. So under stress, you're going to see that get activated. And we're going to talk about why that's important in a moment. I'm saying this because I think a bit of compassion might be warranted here. I think that the holidays, Christmas, the high holidays in particular, I think can be stressful. It's there are expectations, right? So we're gonna definitely talk about some common scenarios you might see. But if you have anyone in your life who's narcissistic, one of the most frustrating things about them, and something we don't talk about often enough, is they have trouble celebrating with you. Not only if you've got something big that's happened, but being in celebration, being like having, um having that shared experience. So you think about the Grinch, the story, the movie, right? And all of the little people in Whoville, right? And they're, singing and joyful and making merry. And you see the Grinch looking at all of that with disdain. And I think this story has great archetypal and cultural relevance because that's exactly what we all experience, right? With a narcissist in our lives. So they're already stressed. There's something about them that doesn't like seeing people being happy. And there's a different levels of impairment, if you will, around how they can celebrate with you. They don't know how to have fun unless they're doing it better than everyone else. So what I'm going to talk about next is how they defend against some of those feelings of shame and vulnerability. So this is like the playlist, the playbill for common scenarios you might see over the holidays. Number one, they may pick a fight with you or someone else and you or they leave. This is pretty common. fueled perhaps maybe by a bit of alcohol or other substances, fueled by history, again, and definitely fueled by their dysregulation. Number two, and this kind of goes with number one, everything about the festivities are about them, right? It's because of that grandiosity and level of entitlement. So what goes along with that is these are the people for whom everything needs to be on their terms. So they host the parties. Now I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but oh well, I'm going to say it anyway. Narcissists notoriously like to host parties so that they can be the center of attention. They might not come to yours, they might not show up for your celebration, but they definitely like to be the host. And these are the same people who make a big deal about hosting and then complain about it. They do. They like to host because they're controlling their environment, number one. And number two, it can also be that it becomes an opportunity to, again, be the life of that party or be the center of attention or get those kudos. But I think that underneath all of that is the fact that everything needs to be on their terms. And I 100% think they all believe that only they can host and will do the best job and have the best tree and have the best meal and on it goes. Okay. Number three, they're weird about gift giving. And so if we think about, the transactional nature of most narcissists relationships, right? This eye for an eye, tit for tat. If I do something for you, you have to do something for me. I think this plays out in gift giving. It can be really hard to find them a gift that they really enjoy, right? And further to that, they one of two things can happen. They can be really, really miserly about gift giving or give a very thoughtless gift, or they may go over the top, spend too much money, and that gift becomes the focus. And I've seen both of those things happen at any given time. Um, if you have someone like this in your life, you know what I'm talking about. And something I've heard over the years are like the grandparents who don't give gifts evenly among the grandchildren. And so some grandchildren are getting, something that's expensive or luxurious, and other grandchildren are getting something that's come from a bargain store or a dollar store. So that can be a common scenario. Number four, sorry, they like to create drama. This goes with everything else I've already said, but this really is, all their world is a stage and you are merely a player. And so this drama can come between them and you. This drama can become between you and other people. They stir the pot, they create this drama. So just something to think about. So drama by definition is, other people observing something that's going on, right? There's something playing out that they're observing. So this is their own inner dysregulation, the gift that keeps on giving, right? I'm sorry, I'm being a smart ass. But they're feeling quite miserable, so you may as well feel miserable as well. Okay, here's something we don't talk about enough. The entitlement. Narcissists feel entitled to your time, money, energy, love, attention. I think the list goes on. And this is the undercurrent of pretty much everything else I've already said. But this is, the most common piece I hear about this is those grandparents who will make their kids drive with their children, like drive with the grandchildren a long way and disrupting, that particular, the morning's festivities, or who are so focused on doing things on their terms that they're not really thinking about the impact on anyone else. So this is, the parent or in-law who gets their nose out of joint if you, choose to celebrate with the other side of the family, or if you take turns and it's not their turn, you might get a bit of that pouting going on. Um, this is a certain selfishness. This is perhaps the expectations they have around what you're supposed to do for them. This plays out in a myriad of ways, and it's a really important aspect when we talk about boundaries here in a moment. Here's the one that I think is key and the one I have the most fun talking about. They are thieves of joy, right? So we talk about, comparisons and perfectionism being the thief of joy. But I literally think that many of these folks are so miserable that they will, perhaps, I don't think consciously, sabotage someone else's event. And I might be the only one who thinks this, but one thing I've observed about narcissists is they don't like to see people happy. They don't like happy people. They like they just don't. There's something about that really triggers them. So that's why they are thieves of joy, right? So, and I'm sure there are many, many things that we could add to this list. But when we come into a time frame, religiously or culturally, where we all sort of need to be bringing our A game to the festivities, the things we're doing, you're going to see the worst come out in them, right? But what I'm asking here for is a bit of understanding and compassion, which is going to serve you well and in the long run be very helpful. So I am speaking very broadly. I mean, this could be parents, siblings, adult children, exes, ex-partners. So your boundaries and your strategies need to align with the severity of what you're going to be dealing with. All right, because I'm being very broad. So I want everyone to take a moment and just think about boundaries and what boundaries mean to you. Okay, because most of the time it freaks people out a little. The most important thing to remember is they're yours. You create them. You make up these rules for yourself based on everything I've just said, right? It's a response to all of the things I've just mentioned. So if we come back to how you're feeling about the word, I just want you to remember that. The most powerful boundary you can have is not being responsible for how someone else feels. That's really easy for me to say. That's very difficult to put into practice. So if we think about, these folks who are in chaos and dysregulation, this isn't your fault, or at least it probably isn't your fault. So that's the most important thing to remember. It's not your job to make them happy. And even if it were, you wouldn't do it well enough, right? It wouldn't do the job. So it's important to have clear boundaries around time, energy, and money. And if you think of anything else, please insert that there. So this is a little bit of a boundary game plan. And what I want you to do now is anchor yourself for a moment into what's important to you. Right? So maybe family is important to you, but maybe so is inner peace, right? I know I'm being kind of funny, but we do have to make difficult choices around that. So if you choose family and the get together as your value while relinquishing your inner peace temporarily, it's important to have a practice that for everything you do that's depleting, you also do something that's very nourishing for yourself, right? And I can't tell you what those things are. One thing that comes to mind, though, that if you're spending time around people who are really toxic and hopefully you don't have to see them very often, please, please have a plan to be around people who you really love and who really light you up, or have downtime, have some of your own time. So we have to balance all of this out. And one thing I will also say, have an exit strategy if that makes sense for you. Like have your own ride, have a plan, have a way out of a difficult conversation. If you're pinned in a corner with someone who is, being competitive or sniping at you, and we all know what those conversations feel like, rehearse how you're going to get out of it. So that might be, oh, I've really enjoyed this little chat, but I see so and so is over there and I want to go and say hello. Or, something like, it's been great catching up with you, but I'm going to go grab a drink. Or I'm going to go check on, maybe you brought a snack, right? So you can gracefully exit out of these uncomfortable situations. So, anchor into what's important to you, okay? And don't feel bad about getting yourself out of a situation that's uncomfortable. Have a bit of a game plan ahead of time, right? So, the other thing that I'm going to add on here is to have a little chunk of time where you are creating a ritual that is meaningful for you. This, if you've grown up in a narcissistic family, this is really important that you do something that lights you up. And a little clue around this is think about what you loved as a kid. And if there isn't anything, I apologize. I'm sorry, but I'm sure there's at least something. So, I love walking out in the cold air and looking at all of the beautiful lights. That's one of my favorites. Or it might be, taking in a parade. It might be baking cookies. It might be watching, some of those, really treasured Christmas movies or books. But where I'm going with this is it's important to be very intentional about taking some of that time to do something that you love to do. And you don't have to do that alone. I mean, you can include the kids. And before I forget, this reminds me, if you have a ex-partner who's likely to sabotage your holiday plans, and I'm probably going to hear this about 20 times before the end of the month, have a plan B. Like, I guess this is true for all of you, right? What am I talking about? No matter what's going on, have a plan B. Have a second idea lined up for if what you've planned doesn't come together, right? Be prepared. It's better to be prepared than to be disappointed, right? So just think about that. Um, and really, and I know I'm repeating myself a little bit on this one, but it's really important. Orient yourself to what's important to you. Anchor into what you value. Take radically good care of yourself through all of this time and hold yourself and the other person in great compassion, right? Their suffering doesn't need to be your suffering. So, with all of that being said, I do wish you all whatever the season means to you. And I'm going to be doing a couple of other more specific talks, particularly about narcissistic families and a little bit about how to regulate if you're around someone who's really chaotic. So thanks for tuning in. Please like, share, subscribe. If you're comfortable, let me know some of your experiences. Let me know what's been helpful for you. And always, always happy to come together and connect if you'd like to have a chat with me about working together. Take very good care. Bye-bye.